show you the different methods of adding zip or zippers to your garment. We are going to be looking at different types of zipper. An example is lapped zip, fly zip, invisible zip, center zip, separating zip, and other types of closure which you need in your garment. I advise pay rapt attention to what I'm doing step by step, because over the years I've discovered that it's quite a challenge to many beginner dressmakers. Enjoy. I'm going to show you how to sew the center zip and the exposed center zip. So sometimes zippers can be functional, it can be decorative, as you can see in this skirt, this denim skirt. So what we did here was to make a bias out of a fabric and use it to trim the side of the exposed zip. So you can use the exposed zip just on its own, or you can use it with trimmings, using trimmings made from your bias or fabric or the already made trimmings. So in making the center zipper, the first thing you should do is to mark out the seam allowance, and this is my zip, the regular zip. The next thing you should do, use your zip to mark how long you want the zip. Remember, the top of the zip should always align with the edge of your skirt or trouser, because you need this part to insert your waistband. So I'm turning it upside down. Then the next thing is to make a marking. This is actually a long zip. You can use a shorter one like size 8, but the same procedure is also for when you are using longer zip, size 18 and above. So I'm going to mark it because this is my pivot point. Here I'm going to pivot when I sew. Then after marking, pin together. You don't want one part of your skirt to be longer than one, so it's advisable to pin it together. So mind you, I'm showing you center zip, exposed or decorative center zip. So after pinning, you can join together. When you are sewing the upper part of the zip, use temporary stitch. So I'm going to set my stitch gauge to 4. That is for making a gather stitch, because it's a temporary stitch. Sewing using temporary stitch, I put my stitch length at 4, the longest one, and don't do reverse stitching because it's not a permanent stitch. You are going to remove it. So you sew. So when you get to the mark where I marked my horizontal marking, I will change it to stitch 2.5, and I will sew and reverse, because this part of the garment will be permanent. That means it will last with the garment. So remember to end your stitching with a double stitch because it's a permanent stitch. So place it on your ironing board. I'm using a sleeve board here. I'll open the seam. Mind you, when you open the seam, you should still steal this line and press with your hot iron so that it will lie flat. So open after ironing, open the seam. The seam is open after ironing. So align the center of your zip with the center of your sewing. So making sure the zip top aligns with the top edge. Then align the center to meet with the center, and using your pin in place. This could be, it may look quite tedious, but by the time you finish the zipper, it will come out very neat and nice. And you know, to give interest to your design, I will advise you as a custom clothier or tailor or dressmaker, always change the styling by changing the method of zip or the type of zipper you're fixing. So after doing this, you use your hand needle and tack in place. We call it tack here. Some country they call it basting. You baste it in place. Your basting should be very neat and uniform because it will be the guide for your final sewing. So I baste it in place. Mind you, I'm showing you both the center zip that is concealed and the exposed one. And what I'm showing you is the same thing. If it is the exposed zipper, instead of sewing it or attaching it to the wrong side, I would have done my attachment to the right side here. So that's the difference. Remember to pivot it where you have this mark. So you see my stitching appearing on this side. So this is the stitching I'm going to follow when I sew finally. So after basting in place, remove your pins before you stitch. Finally, this is the final sewing. Now to sew permanently. You can decide to open the middle before you sew, but I prefer still leaving the stitch on. It's after I finish sewing, I will. So when I get to that line, making sure my needle is down, I pivot. Remember the pivot technique we learned. Then sew across. When you get to the other side, you pivot and complete your sewing. So using my seam ripper, I'll open up the middle. Remember the middle was the temporary stitching where I turned my stitch length to 4. So that it will be easier for me to open up. So now I'm opening the center zip. You see, this is the one I just made. Close it up. So if this part is on this other side, then it is the exposed zipper like the one I showed you in the skirts. So you can see the center zipper when you just put it on top of the first stitching I made, or this one that is the concealed one for skirts. So that's the center zipper. And like I told you before, if you want to make it exposed like what we have here, then you can also use trimmings like what I'm holding and sew it by the side. You can see how beautiful it will look. You can sew it by the side, either concealed or exposed. So I want to show you how to sew on the lap zipper. You can see the stitch runs this way and comes this way. It's quite different from the centered zipper. In sewing the lap zip, you start positioning your fabric like this, that the cutout skirt. This is the right side at the back of the skirt. You position your zipper upside down like we did with the other ones. So this is your line, and you can see the zipper here, so you know the positioning. But I want to align it, making sure it aligns here at the top, the waistline, and it's aligning on my marked line. Before you sew, you pin in place. I don't want a situation where it will shift. The previous ones I didn't pin in place, but it's advisable if you're a beginner to always pin your zip in place before you start sewing. And you remember for our previous lesson on how to sew, when you are approaching the pin, you can either climb it or so on. In sewing this lap zip, I will advise you position your presser foot in a convenient position so now I can start removing my pins as I sew. After stitching on this side, I'll stitch it straight on this side with my zipper facing this side. I will turn it to stitch it down. And I will advise, as you are doing this, make sure you iron in place. You are going to align your zipper, but first of all, sew to this side, the other end of the zip. I'm going to stitch the other end. This one is just to hold it in place, so when I do my lapping, it will come out properly. So after this stage, automatically it will be easier for me to lap it. So now I can now sew my lap zip. The lap zip actually really helps to conceal the zip you are sewing. So now the final stage, the lap zip. So I'm ensuring that my zip, using the whole line, I can see this whole stitching through my fabric, because my fabric, I'm using calico, so I can see through it. So, but make sure your stitching is neat When I get to the end, I'll pivot. So you zip it up, lift up. Before you zip up, make sure your needle is down. Raise up your presser foot and zip it close and continue. Then when you get to the end, you make sure your needle is down. Raise your presser foot and pivot to seal it up, and that is your lap zip. So this is the one I just made. Here is the finished lap zip. You can see this one I used the matching thread. Next, I'm going to show you how to make the separating zipper. These zippers, you can see this is a bust here, so it makes it easy to wear well-fitted garments. And also is the kind of zipper they put on windbreakers, their jackets, you know. So looking at this is a bust here. You can see it opens up and you can now fix it back. It's very good to enclose it inside a lined garment. Very good to enclose it nice on this bust here. Now I want to show you how to sew on separating zipper. So here with me is a separating zipper. You first of all see, and it will split into two. Then just like the invisible zipper, it's almost the same thing. You face the right side downward on your marked seam allowance and you sew. It's just that this time you don't sew very close to the center of the zipper. You sew some distance away, that when you turn it, it will show. It's the simplest form of zipper ever. So here is already sewn separating zipper. You can see it's stitched on both sides of the material, and on the right side you can see how it looks like, because some part of it will be exposed when you sew it. Then the next thing, to finish it off, take one side, just to add some beauty to it by top stitching from it both sides. Separate it entirely and do what I'm just showing you. And do this on both sides of the fabric. So here is the final stage of the separating zipper. So you can see I've stitched both sides of the zipper, and you can see this particular zip is gold plated in the middle, so you can add some aesthetic and embellishment to your finished garment. So let me open it for us to see the final result. See, it separates, and to put it together you can hook it back, and that is your separating zipper. It's the easiest zipper ever to sew. Now I'm going to show you how to sew the invisible zipper that has invisible zipper. You can see it's really concealed. I'm opening it. You can see it's concealed, and when you zip it up, it's more or less, you can't see it in the garment. A lot of people prefer this type of zipper in this part of the country for traditional blouses like this one. So now I'm going to show you how to sew the invisible zip. The invisible zip, you have the front parts. When you zip it, you can see it's a knit close, and the wrong side, this is the wrong side. So to start with, you open up the zipper and turn it upside, the wrong side up. So I'm going to start with this other side, the one that is now on the right side, and making sure that the edge aligns with the edge of my garment. So I'm assuming this is a skirt, but with the technique I'm showing now is for that blouse I introduced when I started. So we are going to use 2 stitches first. Sometimes you can use hand needle to tack it down, or just sew direct like I will show you now. So I'll first of all use, and I'm using a zipper foot so that I can easily access, not the regular machine foam. So, and I'm using a contrast thread so that you can see my stitching. So I'll stop here just for demonstration purpose. Just cut off my thread. Now I'm going to sew it closer. I'm repeating what I just did, but this time I'm going to sew closer, so that way, that's what gives it that invisible effect. The first stitch I did was just to hold it closer, so now I'm going to sew it closer. And while you are sewing, open up it, spread it out, but let it not be too close to the center of the zip. So this is stage 1. You can see it's already as if it's concealed. This is stage 1. So the stage 2 is to take the other part of your work, what you are going to sew, and align it together. It will cover the zip itself. Align it together. Then from the bottom, you sew and stitch it together. So as I'm sewing, I'm checking, because I don't want a situation where it will climb the previous sewing I made. So I'm going to sew it close. And this is the stage 2 of sewing the invisible zipper. Let's see the effect. So you can see it's now getting concealed. I've sewn the bottom part of it. Now I'm going to sew the final stage, and before I sew, I'll close up my zipper first to check. I have it like this, and then sew on the other side. Trying to make sure I get close to the zip itself. So here is a finished invisible zipper that has been sewn. You can see. So this is that stitch, the last stitch I made, and the first one of the two. And by the time we close it up, you can see it's concealed. But I always advise, when you are sewing such a zipper, use a matching color or zip to the fabric. Next, I'm going to show you how to fix the fly zip. The fly zipper on trousers or pants. So here you can see a curve already showing how it's fixed. Then the zipper and the zip up. This actually is similar to the lap zip, but the difference between the fly is that you have a finer curved line sewn to finish it off. In sewing the fly zip, you need a small zip, like 8" or less, and your markings already on the fabric, and this is a cut, the shape of a cut trouser or short. You align this with the first stage is to stitch this on, zipper facing down, making sure that the upper part of the zip aligns with the upper part of the waistline, and I'll pin in place. So the first stitching I'll make is sewing straight, just like a lap zip. I told you the techniques are almost similar. So after this stage, the next stage, open my zip again and stitch it a little bit closer to the center. My stitch. So next is to take it, join it to the other side, hold this together. I'm going to stitch from this marked end to this marked end to join the two cross together. I'm still using my zipper foot. So after sewing the curve, you open your zipper, but allow this to align with it and stitch. This is just to hold it in place for the final stitching. Just sew it straight to hold it in place to sew the final fly. So zip it close after you finish stitching, and make sure, so you can see the marking on both sides. You can see it on this side for the fly shaping. I will ignore this one and use this to shape this to this end. So when it's getting to this part, I curve it. Go gently. That curve is just to guide me to complete the fly. When I get to the seam, where the seam meets, I'll sew in between just to reinforce my stitching. I sew upward, and that is the end. So here is the finished fly. You can see you made the cover and go up a little, double stitch there to reinforce the stitch. So let's see the finished work. That's the finished fly. You can see the overlap, and you zip back, and you have a nice finished fly. And also you may decide to do another double stitching, like a flat seam, to add aesthetics, like in denim.